The rain soaked through my cardigan as I stood frozen, clutching my small suitcase, staring at the door that had just been slammed in my face. At 63 years old, I had been discarded like old trash by my own daughter. Thunder rumbled above, almost mocking my humiliation. I fumbled through my pocket, my fingers brushing against the folded lottery check. $3 million. The irony of it stung. For 2 decades, I had given everything to raise Thalia after her father walked away. I had sacrificed my own dreams, drained my savings, and compromised my dignity. Now, as the cold rain plastered my gray hair to my forehead, I understood that the true poverty in my life wasn't financial. It was the wealth of love I had poured into someone who had none left to give in return. Before we dive back in, let us know where you're tuning in from. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow, I've got something even more special lined up just for you. The carnival was meant to be a day of fun and joy, a simple opportunity for Iloan to reconnect with her grandchildren, Lyra and Orion. But when Weston arrived halfway through, everything began to unravel. Iloan had been prepared for the usual tension in the air when it came to Weston. She knew he didn't like her choices, didn't like her presence in his and Thalia's lives. But this was different. This time, there was a line drawn. Iloan felt it in her chest, the unmistakable coldness in Weston's gaze. As Weston strode towards her, she braced herself, keeping her posture steady. "Children," he called, raising his voice in that cold tone that had always made Iloan bristle. "Time to go." The twins, Orion and Lyra, looked torn, but obediently started to make their way toward him. Iloan could see their disappointment etched on their faces, and it wrenched at her heart. She knelt down, opening her arms to give them the hugs they seemed to desperately need. "I had a wonderful time today," Iloan said, fighting to keep her voice steady, though a lump had already formed in her throat. "And I'll see you again soon," Lyra whispered against her neck. "Promise." "I promise," Iloan whispered back, meaning it with every fiber of her being. She watched as Weston led the children away, his posture rigid, his control over them absolute. And there, trailing behind, was Thalia, her daughter. But it was more than just the physical distance between them. Thalia's shoulders were hunched, her steps measured to stay precisely behind Weston, as though she were following orders instead of making her own choices. Iloan's stomach turned. The image of Thalia, Orion, and Lyra following Weston like a flock of ducks haunted her as she stood there, the gift bag she had planned to give to the children now feeling empty in her hands. She had been so focused on her own hurt, her own sense of displacement, that she hadn't fully understood what had been happening to her daughter. Thalia was not just complicit in Weston's behavior, she was a subject of it, conditioned into submission. In the blur of these emotions, it took Iloan a moment to realize that something needed to change. She couldn't just sit back anymore and let her family break apart at the seams. As Thalia hurried back toward her, breathless, her cheeks flushed with exertion, Iloan's heart skipped. She pressed something small and folded into Iloan's hand. "The twins drew this for you," Thalia whispered, looking over her shoulder nervously. "Weston didn't want them to give it to you, but they worked hard on it." The crayon drawing was simple yet heartbreaking. 4 figures, 2 small ones labeled Orion and Lyra, 1 tall labeled Grandma, and a 4th figure labeled Mom, standing apart from the rest. "Our family," read the childish scrawl above them. Tears sprang to Iloan's eyes. She kissed the drawing, whispering, "Thank you for this." Thalia nodded, her face filled with something Iloan couldn't quite place. Fear, longing, recognition of something lost. "I have to go," she said quickly, her voice tight. "He doesn't like to be kept waiting." Iloan called softly, her voice tinged with concern. "Thalia, are you okay? Really okay?" Thalia gave a slight shake of her head. The fleeting moment of vulnerability quickly swept away. "I'm fine, Mom. Everything's fine." But Iloan could see it in her daughter's eyes, the hesitation, the fear she quickly masked. As Thalia hurried away, Iloan knew with gut-wrenching certainty that nothing was fine at all. Back at Nimria's apartment, Iloan sat on the edge of the guest bed, the children's drawing spread out in front of her. Her thoughts were a whirl of confusion and concern. Valencia and Nimria had both offered to come with her to the carnival, but she had declined, wanting to focus on reconnecting with the twins. Now, she wished she had their perspectives. She reached for her phone, dialing Valencia. "How'd it go?" Valencia's voice was as direct as ever. "The outfit worked its magic," Iloan replied, her voice steady despite the growing tension inside her. "But Weston showed up halfway through, and we didn't get nearly enough time." A brief pause on the other end, followed by a low hiss of indignation. That controlling, manipulative. Valencia's words were sharp, and Iloan didn't need to hear the rest. She could feel her own anger building, a familiar fire she had long kept contained. "It's not just that," Iloan interrupted, her voice growing firmer. "Val, I'm worried about Thalia. She doesn't seem herself. There's something wrong in that house, something beyond Weston just being difficult." Valencia was quiet for a moment, processing before asking, "What kind of something?" Iloan described what she had seen: Thalia's withdrawn demeanor, the way she deferred to Weston, the furtive delivery of the drawing. "It reminds me of when I volunteered at the women's shelter," she said quietly. "The way some women would behave, always looking over their shoulder, anticipating someone else's reactions before their own." "Has he hurt her?" Valencia asked, her voice blunt. "I don't know," Iloan admitted, the words sitting heavy in her stomach. The possibility that Weston could be physically harming her daughter was a horrifying thought. She said everything's fine, but... The conversation shifted when a text message from an unknown number pinged through. Iloan opened it to find a photo of Orion and Lyra in their Halloween costumes. Orion was dressed as an astronaut, Lyra as Emily Dickinson, complete with a quill pen. The message underneath read, "They wanted you to see this. Delete after viewing. T." Iloan's heart both soared and sank at the same time. Thalia was reaching out, creating a covert channel of communication, a positive sign. But the need for secrecy confirmed her worst fears about the dynamics in their home. She quickly saved the photo in her phone's hidden folder before deleting the message as instructed. "I'll need to be careful," she murmured to herself. The need for secrecy was a dangerous sign, but it also confirmed one thing: Thalia was trying to find a way out. As she sat on the guest bed, the weight of what she was facing pressed heavily on her chest. She had no answers yet, but Iloan knew one thing for certain: she couldn't wait any longer. She had to act. The longer Thalia and the children were trapped in Weston's world, the harder it would be for them to escape. The first hint of her transformed life arrived 3 weeks later when Pearl Harrington found a house, a Victorian cottage in Willowbrook, just far enough from Lakeshore Heights to be a safe distance from Weston's reach. The moment Iloan stepped through the blue front door, something inside her shifted. She felt it. Possibility. This wasn't just a house. It was the beginning of something new. A chance to rebuild, not just her life, but the lives of the children she loved. As she wandered through the house, she found that the neglected garden spoke to her. Where others saw chaos, she saw sanctuary. There was an oak tree in the center, its branches low enough for a treehouse. The bones of the house were good. It just needed time and resources to bring it back to life. "I'll take it," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. It was a modest house, but it was a fresh start, one that was entirely her own. She was no longer at the mercy of Weston's decisions, no longer bound by the rules he imposed on her. The house would be a safe harbor, not just for her, but for Thalia and the twins when they were ready. But even as she began to look forward to this new life, she couldn't shake the image of the drawing, the image of her family fractured and divided. Weston might have tried to erase them, but they were still there, still hers. And no matter what he tried, she would not forfeit her relationship with her grandchildren. She would build a new life for herself and them, a life of freedom, a life where they could all grow without fear. It had been a week since Iloan had purchased the cottage in Willowbrook, and already, she had begun to envision how this new life would unfold. The place, though small and in need of renovation, held something intangible: promise. The garden was wild and overgrown, but Iloan saw potential in it. She imagined transforming it into a space that would not only provide sanctuary for her family, but also a place where new roots could grow. The house had 4 bedrooms, one for herself, one for the twins when they came to visit, one for Thalia when she was ready, and one for whatever else the future held. The oak tree in the yard would be perfect for a treehouse for Orion and a swing for Lyra. The possibilities were endless. Valencia, as always, was the first to lend a hand. When Iloan shared her vision for the house, Valencia immediately began helping with the logistics, arranging contractors, ordering materials, and making sure everything was set in motion. It felt surreal to be planning something for herself after so many years of focusing on everyone else. She had spent decades following the needs of Thalia and the twins, but now, finally, she was focusing on herself. She spent most of the next week meeting with contractors and designers, working out the details of the renovations, and dreaming of the future. But while the house was coming together, her concern for Thalia and the twins only deepened. Weston had been released from jail, and though a restraining order had been placed on him, Iloan knew better than to think that would be enough to keep him from trying to regain control over his family. The situation had taken a darker turn after the police had been called during the confrontation that day at the carnival. Iloan had learned that Weston had been abusive, not only to Thalia but also to the children. It was a realization that filled Iloan with a deep, gnawing fear. Her daughter had been living under his thumb for so long that she was nearly unrecognizable to Iloan. The Thalia she knew, the one who had once been bold and independent, had been suffocated, slowly but surely, by Weston's dominance. Even though Thalia had said she was fine, Iloan could see the cracks in her facade. When Thalia had handed her the drawing from the twins, those simple, childlike figures, something deep inside her had broken. It wasn't just a gift. It was a plea for help, one that Iloan couldn't ignore. Determined to stay involved, Iloan kept in close contact with the twins. Their texts, always from different numbers with instructions to delete them immediately, only confirmed that Thalia was trying to protect her family as best she could, but she was still walking a tightrope between keeping her children safe and placating Weston's wrath. It was a precarious balancing act. In the midst of this chaos, the cottage became more than just a house. It became a symbol of freedom, a place where they could breathe without fear, even if only for a short time. One evening, as Iloan was sitting in her temporary living room in Nimria's apartment, she received another text from the twins. It was a simple photo of them in their Halloween costumes. Orion as an astronaut, Lyra as Emily Dickinson, her arms adorned with a homemade quill. The photo was bittersweet, a reminder of how far they had come and how much they had been kept from. Weston had made it clear that he didn't want the twins spending time with Iloan. He had called her a bad influence, accusing her of attempting to steal his children. The reality of his manipulation, his controlling tendencies, became more apparent with every passing day. It had always been there, in subtle ways, in the way he would undermine Iloan's role in their lives, in the way he would discredit her every effort to maintain a relationship with her family. But now, the truth was out in the open. Weston's behavior wasn't just difficult, it was dangerous. Iloan wasn't sure what she could do, but one thing was clear, she would not back down. She wasn't going to stop trying to protect her grandchildren, no matter how much Weston tried to push her out. "I need to be careful," Iloan murmured, her fingers tightening around the phone as she studied the image of the twins. They were safe for now. She couldn't let them fall into Weston's control again, not when they were finally beginning to find their way. Her phone buzzed again, another message from Valencia. "We're on track with the house. It'll be ready soon. How are the kids?" Iloan's heart ached as she typed her response, filling Valencia in on everything that had transpired over the past few weeks. She had been so focused on the house, on rebuilding, that she hadn't fully processed how deeply everything had changed. But there was no going back now. Not for Thalia, not for the twins, and certainly not for herself. By the end of the week, Iloan had closed on the house, and renovations had officially begun. The contractors were hard at work transforming the old Victorian into a home. Iloan could hardly believe how far she had come, from being thrown out in the rain just weeks ago to now standing in the doorway of a house that was beginning to feel like her own. It wasn't just about the house, though. It was the opportunity to build something new, to create a space where she could give the children what they needed: freedom, stability, love. That night, as she sat in the kitchen of Nimria's apartment, the reality of her new life settled in. It wasn't just the house. It was everything that had led up to this moment. The struggles, the heartbreak, the courage to walk away from everything she had known. But now, finally, she was standing on the edge of something beautiful. The next day, Iloan made a call to Valencia to update her on the house's progress. They discussed the next steps: furnishing, finishing touches, and of course, the ongoing legal battle for her grandchildren's custody. With Weston's recent release on bail and the restraining order in place, there was still much to be done. Iloan needed to make sure that the twins were safe and that she could continue to maintain a relationship with them. "I think it's time," Valencia said, her voice a mixture of determination and hope. "We need to focus on helping Thalia find her way out, too. Not just the kids." Iloan nodded in agreement. It was clear that Thalia needed help, not just emotionally, but professionally. It wasn't just the abuse, it was the years of being trapped in a marriage where her career, her dreams, and her autonomy had been buried. Iloan wasn't sure how, but she knew that she had to find a way to help Thalia rediscover her own path. Valencia had an idea. She had contacts in the pharmaceutical industry and had been discussing a potential research position with the Iverwood Medical Research Foundation. It was exactly the kind of work Thalia had been passionate about before Weston's influence had smothered it. Iloan didn't need to hear more to know that this was the right opportunity. She had the resources now, and she was going to make sure Thalia had the chance to rebuild. This was the beginning of something new for Iloan, Thalia, and the twins. The foundation was being built, piece by piece. And as the renovations to the Victorian house continued, Iloan could feel the weight of the world lifting off her shoulders, one brick at a time. She was no longer at the mercy of Weston's cruelty. For the first time in a long while, Iloan was in control of her own life, and it felt like freedom. She would do whatever it took to help her daughter and her grandchildren heal and find their way out of Weston's shadow. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but at least now, Iloan had a clear sense of direction. She was no longer a passive participant in her own life. She was a creator, a builder, and above all else, she was a protector. The weeks following Iloan's purchase of the Victorian cottage unfolded in a blur of activity. Renovations moved forward at a steady pace, and slowly, a vision of a home began to emerge. The four-bedroom house, once a run-down shell, was taking shape, its bones strong and ready for the new life it would hold. Iloan's heart swelled every time she walked through the front door, imagining the day when it would be filled with warmth, laughter, and the sounds of her family, her grandchildren especially. The garden, however, was what truly captured her attention. The weeds and vines that had once run rampant in the neglected space now seemed to yield to her nurturing touch. The overgrown herbs were being pruned back, and the wildflowers were blooming with a new sense of purpose. The old fruit trees, though weathered by time, began to take on a new life as well, their branches offering a perfect platform for Orion's dream treehouse. The oak tree, the centerpiece of the garden, grew more majestic with each passing day, its branches stretching skyward, promising new beginnings. Iloan's decision to leave the chaos of her previous life behind had been difficult, but as she spent more time at the cottage, she started to feel a sense of peace she had longed for. The home was becoming a sanctuary, not just a place to live, but a place to heal. She was no longer just existing. She was actively building the future she had always dreamed of. As Iloan settled into this new chapter, the tension between her and Weston continued to simmer beneath the surface. The restraining order against him had given her some peace of mind, but the legal battle for her grandchildren's custody was far from over. Weston's legal team was relentless, and it seemed as though every move they made was designed to undermine Iloan's stability and ability to care for the twins. But Iloan wasn't backing down. The conversations she had with Valencia and Nimria helped ground her. They offered insight into the complicated dynamics of controlling relationships, and though they encouraged her to focus on the house and her own healing, Iloan knew she couldn't sit idly by while her grandchildren were in such a volatile environment. One evening, after a long day of coordinating renovations and reviewing legal paperwork, Iloan received an unexpected text from Thalia. It was a simple photo, just the twins, sitting on the front steps of their house in Lakeshore Heights. They were holding up signs they had made, "We love Grandma," with hearts drawn around the words. Tears welled in Iloan's eyes as she stared at the photo. It was clear that Thalia was doing her best to shield the children from Weston's wrath, but the tension in their faces was undeniable. They were caught in a conflict that no child should ever have to endure. The message was subtle but clear. Thalia was reaching out, even if it was through small gestures like these. She was still trying to keep some semblance of normalcy for the twins, but the cracks in the facade were becoming more evident. Iloan responded quickly, typing a simple message. "I love you both, and I'll always be here for you. Stay safe, and remember, Grandma is always here when you need me." The response came a few minutes later, again, simple but telling. "Thanks, Mom. Things are getting better. I'll keep you updated." Iloan put down her phone, the weight of her daughter's words settling deep within her. She knew Thalia's life wasn't getting better. Not yet, not fully. But Iloan also knew that she had to keep showing up, keep being present, even from a distance. The next few days were consumed with more phone calls, more paperwork, and more planning. Valencia had been instrumental in helping Iloan structure her new life, and now she was taking the lead on a very specific project: getting Thalia back into the professional world. The research position with Iverwood Medical Research Foundation was set to be the opportunity that would give Thalia the independence she needed to step away from Weston's toxic control. Valencia had been working her contacts relentlessly to ensure that Thalia would have a legitimate and high-profile career opportunity that would both fulfill her professional potential and offer a path toward freedom. It wasn't just about creating a job for Thalia, it was about giving her the space and the autonomy to rediscover herself, to remember who she was before Weston's smothering influence had taken root. Thalia had always been brilliant. Iloan remembered the days when Thalia would talk about her research, her ambition to contribute to the fight against cancer. But when Weston came into their lives, those ambitions had been put on hold. He had convinced her that her place was at home, serving as the perfect wife and mother to his every need. Thalia had sacrificed so much for him, and for the children, but now, finally, she was starting to see a way out. Iloan couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as she imagined the possibilities for Thalia's future. This was the path Iloan had dreamed of for her daughter, a path of independence, self-reclamation, and professional fulfillment. But she knew it wouldn't be easy. Weston wasn't just going to let her go without a fight. One Friday afternoon, as Iloan worked on her garden, planting bulbs for the coming spring, she got a call from Ms. Phillips, the Child Protective Services worker. There had been a significant development. A court hearing had been scheduled for the following week regarding the twins' custody. Though the temporary placement with Iloan had been agreed upon, the formal hearing would determine the long-term future. Ms. Phillips had warned Iloan that the situation could become more complicated, especially since Weston was fighting so hard for full custody. "Iloan," Ms. Phillips said, her voice calm but serious, "I need to prepare you for what's coming. Weston will do everything in his power to turn the tables. He may try to discredit you, to paint you as unstable or unfit. He's not going to make this easy." Iloan's grip on the phone tightened. "I won't back down," she said firmly. "I'm not going to let him win." "Just be prepared," Ms. Phillips replied. "This is about the children's safety and well-being. And as much as Weston might try to manipulate the situation, we have the facts on our side." Iloan hung up, her heart heavy with the knowledge that the battle was far from over. She was fighting not only for her own future, but for the future of the twins, the children she had come to love as her own. A few days later, Thalia called Iloan with some unexpected news. She had been in touch with a potential employer who had offered her a position as a research director for a pharmaceutical startup. The company focused on developing affordable treatments for neglected diseases, a cause that had always been close to Thalia's heart. The offer was tempting, but it also presented a significant challenge. Halcyon Therapeutics was based in Boston. If Thalia accepted the position, it would mean leaving Lakeshore Heights, and by extension, leaving Weston and the life she had built with him. Thalia was torn. She wanted to take the opportunity, but at the same time, she didn't want to uproot the children or disrupt their lives any more than they already had been. The conflict was palpable in her voice as she shared the news. "I don't know what to do, Mom," Thalia admitted. "This job could be exactly what I need, but it's so far away. And I don't want to take the twins away from their home." Iloan's heart ached as she listened to her daughter. She knew how much Thalia had sacrificed, how much she had given up for the sake of her family. And now, for the first time in a long while, Thalia was considering a path that would allow her to be true to herself. But the thought of being separated from her children, even if temporarily, was painful. "I think you need to do what's best for you, Thalia," Iloan said gently. "You've spent so many years living for everyone else. It's time for you to start living for yourself." Thalia didn't respond immediately, but Iloan could hear the weight of her words sinking in. After a long pause, Thalia spoke again. "I'll think about it, Mom. I need to make sure this is the right decision, for all of us." "I'm proud of you," Iloan said, her voice steady. "Whatever you choose, you're not alone. We'll make it work together." The decision loomed over them both: Thalia's future, the children's safety, and Iloan's new life. She had fought for so long to build something for herself, and now, as her family's future was being redefined, she couldn't help but wonder if she had finally found a way to bring them all to safety. It was a path still filled with uncertainty, but for the first time in years, Iloan felt like she was stepping into the unknown with courage instead of fear. The journey ahead would be long and fraught with challenges. But Iloan was no longer afraid. For herself, for Thalia, and for the twins, she would fight for their futures. The court hearing for the twins' custody was drawing near, and the atmosphere surrounding Iloan felt charged with an unspoken tension. She knew the stakes were high: her role in their lives, the future she was striving to build, and the fragile hope that they could truly start over in a place free from Weston's control. The night before the hearing, Iloan stood in the doorway of the new home, looking out over the garden. The garden, once wild and untamed, was now a place of peace. She had planted the seeds of change here, both literally and metaphorically. It had become her sanctuary, a place where her grandchildren could learn and grow, just as she was. And now, as she prepared for this next legal battle, she hoped it would become a sanctuary for them too. As she walked through the house, her thoughts were pulled back to the pivotal decision Thalia was facing. The research position in Boston, though appealing, meant separation, possibly a permanent one, from her children. The idea of leaving them behind, even for professional growth, felt like a dagger to Thalia's heart. The twins were her world. But Thalia was finding the courage to choose herself, to put her own dreams first after years of living under the weight of Weston's control. It was a painful choice, but perhaps it was the only one she could make to reclaim her life. Iloan hadn't told Thalia yet, but she had been secretly researching Boston, preparing to offer her full support if Thalia chose to take the position. Whether it meant helping with travel expenses, or even temporarily taking care of the children while Thalia settled into her new role, Iloan would find a way to help. But for now, her focus had to be on the immediate matter at hand: the twins and the custody hearing. Weston's legal team was relentless, as expected. They had made no secret of their intention to fight for full custody, despite the volatile environment they all knew existed at home. Weston's manipulative behavior had been an open secret, and yet, he had allies who were willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Iloan knew the courtroom would be a battleground, and though she felt a deep sense of dread, she also felt a spark of something else: determination. The day of the hearing arrived with an overcast sky, the kind that made everything feel heavy and uncertain. Iloan arrived at the courthouse early, meeting with her attorney outside the courtroom. Valencia, ever her fierce advocate, had come with her for moral support. Together, they discussed their strategy. Iloan was well prepared, but the prospect of facing Weston in the courtroom filled her with a foreboding anxiety. When the doors to the courtroom opened, Iloan entered with a deep breath, her mind focused on one thing: her grandchildren. They were the reason she was here, the reason she had fought through so many challenges, the reason she was willing to do whatever it took to ensure they had a safe, loving future. Thalia had opted to stay home, though she would be watching from a distance, her decision about Boston still hanging in the air. She had chosen to focus on the children's future rather than her own for now, putting them first, as always. Iloan understood the sacrifice that decision entailed, but also the strength it demonstrated. Inside the courtroom, Iloan's heart sank as she saw Weston and his lawyer sitting confidently across from her. Weston, with his self-assured smile, seemed to believe he was still in control. But as Iloan took a seat, she knew something he didn't. She wasn't the same woman she had been when she left his house, angry and confused, standing alone in the rain. She was stronger now. And nothing he did would take that away from her. The hearing began with standard introductions, the judge noting that this was a critical case due to the allegations of domestic violence and the current custody arrangement. Weston's lawyer began with a forceful statement, attempting to paint Iloan as an unstable and impulsive figure who couldn't provide the children with a steady home. Iloan fought the urge to roll her eyes. This was their strategy, to discredit her. But she wasn't intimidated. She wasn't the woman she used to be. Her attorney rose to make his opening statement, outlining the situation clearly and without hesitation. He painted a picture of Weston's history of controlling behavior, of his violent tendencies, and the impact of these on the children. He referred to the police reports, the therapist's notes, and the statements from both the children's school and Ms. Phillips from CPS. Each of these documents and testimonies formed a clear narrative, one of a man who was dangerous, and a woman, her, who had become the children's steadfast protector. As the testimony unfolded, Iloan could feel the weight of everything she had fought for resting on her shoulders. The lawyer presented her case with undeniable conviction, emphasizing her role in the twins' lives. She was not just their grandmother. She was the safe harbor they needed. She had offered them a home, stability, love, and a future, everything that Weston was unable or unwilling to provide. But Weston was not going down without a fight. He stood up, his demeanor cold and calculated, launching into his own defense. He painted himself as a loving father, a man who had always put his children first, despite the difficulties he and Thalia had faced. He spoke of Iloan's emotional instability, her supposed inability to provide the kind of structure and discipline the children needed. Weston's attorney worked hard to discredit Iloan's ability to parent, attempting to paint her as a figure who was acting out of vengeance rather than a genuine desire to protect her grandchildren. Iloan's heart pounded as Weston spoke, but she stayed silent. This was his game, his manipulation, and she wouldn't fall for it. As the hearing continued, she focused on the one thing that had always kept her grounded, the love she had for the twins. That was the truth, the real story, and it was one she had lived every day since Weston had shut her out. The courtroom session stretched on for hours, each side presenting their case, the tension growing with every word. Iloan sat still, her hands clenched tightly in her lap, but her resolve hardening. She had come this far, and she wasn't about to back down now. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the judge called for a recess. Iloan stood, her legs stiff from sitting for so long. Valencia was by her side immediately, offering quiet encouragement. "You're doing great," Valencia said, squeezing her arm. "They can't fight the truth. The judge will see that." Iloan nodded but didn't speak. Her mind was already running through the next steps. The reality was clear. Weston would not let go easily. He would fight, tooth and nail, for the children. He saw them as possessions, not people. But Iloan knew she would do everything in her power to protect them. She had already promised them that. And her promise meant everything. When the session resumed, Iloan took a seat with renewed determination. The next few hours felt like a blur. Witnesses testified, documents were reviewed, and finally, the judge gave his ruling. The decision was announced at the end of the day. The temporary custody arrangement was upheld, with an extension for Iloan to continue caring for the twins until further assessments could be made. Weston would still have supervised visitation, but he would not regain full custody without meeting significant requirements. Relief surged through Iloan as the judge's words settled over her. It wasn't the final victory, but it was a monumental step. The twins were safe for now. They were with her, where they belonged. And Weston's grip over them was loosening, slowly but surely. Later that evening, as Iloan sat alone in her garden, she thought about everything that had led her to this point. The victories, the battles, the tears. She thought about Thalia's struggles and the difficult choices she was now facing. Boston seemed so far away, but Iloan knew that whatever path Thalia took, she would be there to support her. Iloan was no longer just fighting for the children. She was fighting for her family, for a future that was no longer defined by Weston's cruelty and control, but by love, freedom, and the possibility of something better. She looked up at the stars, a quiet sense of peace washing over her. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in years, Iloan felt as though she was standing on solid ground. And she was ready for whatever came next. The weeks following the court hearing unfolded in a blur of busy days and quiet nights. Iloan adjusted to her new role as the primary caregiver for the twins, still adjusting to the idea of being a full-time grandmother, but also savoring every moment with them. The house was alive with their energy, their laughter, and their ever-expanding curiosity. Each day they planted new seeds in the garden. Each new project they embarked on filled Iloan's heart with a deep sense of purpose. It felt like a second chance, both for her and for them. The twins were thriving, slowly shedding the tension that had been palpable in their bodies for so long. Orion, with his scientific mind, spent hours designing structures, measuring out angles and distances with a precision that amazed Iloan. Lyra, ever the artist, spent her time with her sketchbook, her eyes focused on the garden, capturing its beauty in vibrant colors. They were becoming who they were meant to be, unshackled by the rules Weston had tried to impose on them, free to explore their talents in their own way. Though the weight of the past was still heavy on her shoulders, Iloan felt a new sense of freedom, too. There was something profoundly fulfilling about waking up in the Victorian cottage each morning, stepping into the garden, and knowing that this space, this new life, was hers. The decision to buy the cottage, to invest in a home for herself and her family, had been the most pivotal decision she had ever made. It symbolized her rebirth, her independence. But despite the progress, there were still moments of pain and uncertainty. Weston, though temporarily sidelined by the court's decision, had not disappeared. He continued his weekly visits with the twins under the supervision of a third party, but Iloan could see the manipulations beneath his calm demeanor. He was calculating, watching for weaknesses to exploit, seeking any opportunity to regain control. Iloan knew that this battle was far from over. There would be more court dates, more maneuvering, more moments of doubt. And then there was Thalia. Iloan had kept her word to support her daughter, despite the emotional toll of the past few months. But Thalia's decision about Boston still weighed heavily on both of them. While the position was a brilliant opportunity, Iloan had her reservations. The thought of Thalia leaving, taking herself and the twins further from her, felt like a blow to her heart. Yet, as Thalia grew more confident in her recovery, Iloan saw how much the offer meant to her. It was a chance to reconnect with her professional self, to regain a sense of purpose beyond the roles Weston had imposed upon her. One afternoon, Iloan sat with Valencia at a local cafe, sipping tea and discussing the latest developments at the shelter. Valencia had always been her rock throughout this journey, a constant reminder that she didn't have to face this alone. The expansion of Willowbrook's shelter was progressing well, thanks to the grant Iloan had secured through her foundation. The project was a lifeline for women and children escaping abusive situations, a cause that had become deeply personal for Iloan. But even in the midst of this work, her mind kept returning to Thalia and the decision that was looming over them all. "I don't know what to do, Val," Iloan said quietly, her gaze fixed on the half-empty cup in front of her. "I want Thalia to take that job in Boston. I do. She deserves to find herself again. But I can't imagine the twins being so far away. I don't know if I can bear it." Valencia placed a reassuring hand over Iloan's. "Ellie, you've raised the twins through everything. You're their anchor. Thalia knows that. She's not going to leave them behind. Not completely. She's just finding a way to balance it all." "I hope so," Iloan replied softly. "But it's so hard. Every time I think I understand what's best for them, something else comes up, and I feel like I'm losing them all over again." Valencia didn't respond right away. her fingers tapping thoughtfully on the table. You're not losing them, Ellie. You're giving them something they've never had. Freedom. Freedom to be who they really are. And you're doing it for Thalia too. Sometimes, you have to give people the space to heal and grow on their own. You can't carry all of it for them. Iloan's heart swelled with emotion. Valencia always knew exactly what to say. You're right. I want to make sure they're all okay. I want Thalia to be okay. Valencia smiled. She will be. You'll help her, and you'll help the twins. You've already given them so much. You just have to let them take the next step, and you'll be there waiting when they come back. The warmth of Valencia's words settled over Iloan, a balm for her worries. She didn't have to carry everything on her shoulders. She had done what she could, and now it was time for Thalia and the children to find their own way. Later that evening, Iloan sat on the porch with Thalia, the twins having already gone to bed after another day of exploring the garden and drawing up plans for their treehouse. The air was cool, and the stars twinkled above them, offering a sense of serenity and possibility. "Mom, I've been thinking," Thalia said, her voice quiet but resolute. She took a deep breath before continuing. "I've decided not to take the Boston job. Not right now. The kids need me here, and I need to be here with them. I've got my work here. I'm building a life, and I don't want to uproot everything again." Iloan turned to face her daughter, her heart swelling with pride. "I'm proud of you, Thalia. Whatever you choose, I'm with you. But I think you're making the right choice. This is where you belong, where we belong. We've built something here. And you don't have to sacrifice everything for it." Thalia smiled, her eyes shimmering with unspoken emotion. "I know, Mom. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't holding on to the past out of fear. I don't want to live my life for anyone else anymore. Not Weston, not even the twins. I need to be whole for them. And for myself." Tears prickled in Iloan's eyes. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear those words, how much she had needed to see her daughter finally choose herself. "You've come so far, Thalia," Iloan said softly. "And you've shown me what strength really is. You're creating your own future, and I'm lucky to be a part of it." The night grew quiet around them, the soft rustling of leaves and the occasional chirp of a distant bird providing the only sound. For the first time in a long while, Iloan felt at peace, knowing that whatever challenges the future held, they would face them together. In the weeks that followed, Thalia's decision to stay close to the family proved to be the right one. She continued to consult with her former colleagues and worked remotely on projects that fulfilled her passion for scientific research. She began teaching the twins about the complexities of the natural world, bridging the gap between her professional identity and her role as a mother. The twins, in turn, blossomed under her nurturing guidance, each day bringing them closer to becoming the individuals they were meant to be. And Iloan? She continued to build her life, both for herself and for those she loved. The garden flourished, and the house became more than just a home. It became a symbol of resilience, of hope, of the unbreakable bond between grandmother and grandchildren. As the seasons shifted, bringing with them new challenges and opportunities, Iloan remained steadfast in her role as a protector, a guide, and a matriarch. Her relationship with Thalia deepened, founded not just on the love they shared but on the respect and understanding that had grown between them. She was no longer simply a mother or a grandmother. She had become the architect of her own future, building a life filled with meaning, purpose, and above all, love. And for the first time in years, Iloan could finally say with certainty that the past had no power over her. She had reclaimed her life, and in doing so, had created a future not just for herself, but for her children and grandchildren. With the children's laughter echoing from the garden and Thalia's gentle voice drifting from the porch, Iloan allowed herself to dream of what might come next. No longer driven by fear or loss, she was free to chart her own course, one filled with promise, and the unwavering belief that, no matter what, she would always have a home and a family by her side.